Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Friday evening, the 15th of February, 2019, and tonight's topic, State of Emergency, boosts gold, silver, platinum, and equities. It was a very busy day today, both in news and in the markets, and you would think with this state of emergency being declared by the president in the middle during trading hours that we might have a rise in perhaps gold or silver as some type of safe haven, but who would have expected the equity markets also to boost higher? Now, Trump did mention during his speech outside the Oval Office that the stock market's doing well and it's heading towards all-time highs, so I guess the Trump pump is still at work, even when he's talking about building a wall and declaring a state of emergency. He's also pumping the stock market. Let's take a look at what happened in the markets today. It's a very good day for both gold and silver, and platinum actually outperformed them all, had a bit of a surge. Now let's take a look at those charts for today and see what happened. Now the gold price, which has been over $1,300, is remaining solidly above $1,300. Closed today at 13.21. That's where it is now. There is no trading until Sunday evening Eastern Standard Time around 6 o'clock. So that is your weekend number. And that was up $8.67, or up 0.66%. Silver actually had a better day. Now remember, my theory on gold and silver is silver will go higher, and that gold-silver ratio will come down only if gold rises for a significant period and is rising due to monetary issues, not due to excessive jewelry demand, but due to monetary issues. Remember, silver's monetary component, which is measured by what I call the investment demand, it's only 10-15% at the moment. But if gold moves higher on monetary demand and gets really high, starts to move higher, it looks like it's definitely unstoppable for a period of time, then silver will catch up because people will look at silver as a secondary or a little brother, little sister to gold, and will buy silver for its monetary or investment purpose. Hasn't happened yet, but today was a decent day for silver, up about 1%, up 15 cents. But remember, about a month ago, both gold and silver did cross the respective $1,300 and $16 an ounce thresholds, and silver lost it, and gold has managed to retain its head above $1,300 and is now at $1,320. Silver looks set to regain that. I would imagine if we see next week, if gold can manage to tack on another $10, $20, then I think silver will get itself back over $1,600. Now, what did that do for the gold-silver ratio? Not too much. I mean, silver was up more today than gold, but not really that much. Came down to 83, 85. And remember, I'm going to keep repeating this every time we look at the gold-silver ratio. The reason the gold-silver ratio is not and will probably never be 16 to 1, 15 to 1, or 9 to 1 based on relative rarity or historic ratios is because when those ratios existed, gold and silver were both almost apples to apples in the sense that they were both money. They were both circulating currencies. They are neither today, but gold does have a higher monetary profile in that, as we're going to see in a story in a bit. Still held by central banks, still held by many central banks, whereas silver is not. But still, gold is not used as a currency, but it is held as a monetary asset where silver is not. So that's why your gold-silver ratio, absent either a return to, which I don't expect, both of them being remonetized, or there could be a case, excuse me, where silver actually gets a commodity bid, just like palladium did, where there is a need for silver. Not a monetary need, but an industrial need. Could be in solar, it could be in electronics, it could be in something we're not aware of yet. Electronic cars, who knows? But that's where there could be excess demand for silver outside of its monetary demand and have nothing to do with what's happening with gold. And that's where you might get that gold-silver ratio to come down. But if you're expecting it to come down solely based on monetary issues, the only time we've even approached 16 to 1 since both metals have been demonetized since 1974 was once in 1980 when silver did reach a 16 to 1 for about 10 minutes in 1980. And in 2011, during that period of time where gold was clearly taking off, silver followed and got as low as 31. The ratio got as low as 31 to 1. Silver is a spike and dive metal when it comes to that, but silver could pull a palladium or a platinum on its industrial demand. But otherwise, if you're counting on silver to move higher on the basis of some type of financial issue and for its monetary properties, that would have to be either in a collapse scenario, in which case both silver might even have a premium, and I don't deny this. In a collapse scenario or a EMP, a power grid down, silver may have a premium, a very good premium, because silver is far better. If you go to the Smaulgld money matrix, that's at the top of the YouTube channel, it talks about how silver is ideal for barter in the case where you cannot trade digitally because the power is out. But otherwise, I don't expect the gold-silver ratio under normal circumstances to return, and I'm not scratching my head and saying unsustainable because the gold-silver ratio is over 81. In fact, it's averaged well over 50 to 1 ever since 1974, when Americans were then allowed to hold gold again, and silver had already been taken out of the coins in 1965, and Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard in 1971. So ever since then, you really haven't seen anything close to a 16 to 1 or 15 to 1. So when people start touting this should be 16 to 1, 15 to 1, 9 to 1, I don't think they either understand or have the full picture. And they clearly are not looking at a apples to apples comparison, because the world was, it's not because this time is different. It's because neither metals are being used as money, and governments aren't setting bimetallic standards and ratios at 16 to 1 or 15 to 1. As the U.S. did. In 1792, the U.S. set a bimetallic standard at 15 to 1. They raised it, I think, in 1838 to 16 to 1. All right, let's move on from gold, silver. But I do want to keep harping on that every time we look at the gold-silver ratio, because I get all types of emails. Don't you understand? It comes out of the ground at 9 to 1, and I have to repeat myself. And I'm going to repeat myself. You come here, you're going to hear it. All right, I'll try to make it interesting. Speaking of copper, which we weren't, but copper is a monetary metal. This is just an article. Copper to rise more than 60% in 6 years. Now, why is copper rising? Not because they use it in pennies or other, or in U.S. currency, in dimes, quarters, half dollars, because it is used. It's 75% of a quarter, of a half dollar, and a nickel. And a nickel, yes, and a dime. But because there's a lot of industrial use, and now they're saying electric cars are going to use a lot of copper piping. Copper is very similar to silver in the sense it's not a precious metal, but it does have a monetary component, but that's not what's driving it higher. It's the fact that it is a very useful metal. It's relatively limited. Yeah, platinum, very interesting. Platinum did a spike today. Now, even though platinum was up $20 today, it was a spike, it's almost like it just made up the ground since it was at the beginning of the month. Platinum was trading $820, and now it's back to $805, but that's better than the $795 it was at the start of the day. So I'm not sure what happened in platinum today, why it went up, but it's still not out of the woods yet, but it was a 2.5% gain today. Then we saw on Market Watch, we are seeing a lot of mainstream media stories not being so negative on gold, being relatively positive. Not gold to the moon or game over, game changer, but some very positive type of comments here. Gold bulls are looking for a major breakout above 1,400 an ounce. I don't know if that's a major breakout. I mean, to go up to from 1,320 to 1,400. I mean, it's not the type of game-changing move. It's a 6% rise, but it's a nice breakout. And Market Watch is covering it in that fashion. Last story on gold. I always talk about why Russia buys gold, not because they know what is coming and all that kind of stuff, because they mine a lot of it. They're the third largest mining country in the world. Recently, the New York Times finally covered what I've been saying, that the reason Russia buys gold, it's convenient. They've got it in their backyard. They got tons of it, literally, and that they want to convert their rubles into gold because rubles aren't worth very much, even though the central bank of Russia has a prudent, very low debt, very decent policy. They have 500 billion in reserves. They have 20% of their reserves in gold. But what's hurting the Russian currency is that they're under sanctions. But in any event, they do add a lot of gold. And here we saw they've announced their output, and I'll add this to the Smaulgld charts, that its gold output rose to 314 tons in 2018. Now, for those of you who know, I report on Russian gold reserves each and every month, and the final year's tally for 2018 was 272 tons. So a quick calculation shows that of the 314 tons that the Russians mined in 2018, they put 87% of that gold right back into the Central Bank of the Federation of Russia's balance sheet. And the rest of the gold, they had some deals with China and India to sell off the rest of it. So, very important to note why Russia's buying gold. Same reason Kazakhstan is buying gold. Two countries, good gold production, terrible currencies. It's as good as gold to put that on your balance sheet. If you got it, why not? It makes, especially Russia. I mean, if Russia is going to be under sanctions with the U.S., doesn't have much trade with the U.S., what's the point of holding dollars? What's the point of holding U.S. treasuries in reserves? Now, they got rid of most of their treasuries, and they're better off holding gold. I mean, it doesn't pay interest, but, you know, you'll probably get, over the next few years, 5, 6, 7, 8% gain versus the dollar annually, perhaps, much higher versus the ruble. But they do still hold dollars for transactional purposes. So as a store of wealth for a country like Russia that actually has gold in its backyard, makes total sense. Same with Kazakhstan. If you have a gold mine in your backyard, I would advise you to convert whatever local currency you have also into gold. Let's move on over to cryptos and see what happened. Let's first take a look at the prices. Cryptos too were up today. But I don't think cryptos were up as a result of this emergency. Bitcoin up to 35.65, up it's up about 0.1%. Ethereum at $120, up 1%. Litecoin up to $42, up almost 3%, and Bitcoin Cash at $120. That's pretty much flat. Now, before we move on, I just want to mention this. I was having a discussion with Sean Sailor X about, it had nothing to do with what we were talking about. He was questioning why a particular entity would have so many institutional investors, and it's irrelevant to the point. But the point I want to make about institutional investors and cryptocurrencies, a lot of people say, well, why would institutional investors want anything to do with cryptocurrencies? They're highly speculative, doesn't make any sense. And why are all these companies like Bakkt, which is the New York Stock Exchange, Microsoft, Starbucks, Boston Consulting platform that's set to launch in the next month or two, it's going to trade cryptocurrencies and give the institutional investors a way of storing the cryptocurrencies, taking physical delivery of the futures contracts, and also having a platform from which to spend their cryptocurrencies. So why would an institution want anything to do with that? Well, if you look what happened in 2017 and in 2013, 2011, when you had these massive spikes in the price of Bitcoin, you're talking about 1,000%, 2,200%, 3,200%, ridiculous increases. Well, that's the reason. It's done it before, and unless you believe that Bitcoin is done, finished, never coming back again, then you know that there's that potential there. Now you also know that there's a potential for it to collapse 80% because it's done it 3 or 4 times. But each time it's collapsed 80 or some odd percent, it's then gone back to, boom, triple digits, quadruple, septuple. I mean, it's just gone up thousands of percent again. Now, it may not ever go back up again like that. However, there is a possibility that it could do that because it has done that. And so the rationale for institutions, this is, I'm not giving investment advice to institutions, but I've heard this concept before. If you put 1% or less of an institution's portfolio into cryptos, if it goes down 80% or even 100%, well, you lose 1% of your portfolio. That's not that big of a deal. However, if it goes up 1,000%, 5,000%, 10,000%, that's a big deal. That small amount that they have in their portfolio can make the year's overall gains actually be outsized, even if the rest of the portfolio underperforms. And since it is not only just a speculative asset with a proven track record that it can do that type of spike, usually when you're looking for speculative assets, you have to find like a biotech stock or an internet stock, social media stock, whatever it is, and you got one crack at it. It's either going to hit or it's not. It's and that's the interesting thing about the crypto space is it goes up and it goes down. It goes up and it goes down. It goes up and it goes down. It's happened on multiple occasions. Most companies, if they go up and they rocket up and then collapse, that's the end of them usually. And usually that's the case with any bubble. Once the bubble bursts, you don't hear about people saying, we're waiting for the next tulip bubble. That's not going to happen. Tulips are not going to be the next bubble, or if they are, it's going to happen every few hundred years. Bitcoin appears happens every couple of years. I'm not saying it's going to happen again, but if you're putting 1% or less into cryptos as an institutional investor, we're talking about, well, even an individual investor, I suppose if you have $10,000 and you put 1% in there, it's not going to be the end of the world if you lose the 1%. Obviously, if you have $10,000, 1% of that isn't really going to harm you. And I guess I think it is the perfect speculative, non-correlative asset because it doesn't really matter what's going on in the markets. It just goes up and it goes down whenever it feels like it. So if you have $10,000 and you put $100 in, I mean, you lose the $100. You can easily lose the $100 on your overall portfolio if it just goes down a very small amount. If you lose the entire amount, you lose the entire amount. But if that $100 gets you tenfold gain, well, that's $1,000. Well, out of your $10,000, all of a sudden the whole portfolio's got a 10% gain. That's how I think why institutions are very interested in this. And actually, I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Invest in institutions, put small amounts into a small market like cryptocurrencies. It's going to drive the price higher. We haven't seen that in silver. I've been waiting for. I said, why wouldn't even just individuals pour money into silver? They just don't. And I think cryptocurrencies have shown people the ability to spike and dive in a much tighter range. So if you look at silver, silver has done a spike and dive. Did it in 1980, and then it did it in 2011. It hasn't done it since. So cryptocurrencies have done it in 2011, 2013, 2017. Could easily happen again. Could never happen. But then again, on a $10,000 portfolio, $100 may not be the end of the world if it goes to zero. Or if it does nothing this year. But then next year, let's say that $100 goes down to 80, then it goes back up to $1,000. Well, then over the 2 years, you've managed to actually add 5% to your portfolio each year. All right. I'm not trying to sell cryptos. I'm just explaining why institutions might be interested in having small amounts of cryptocurrencies, not going all. I know what it was. It was grayscale we were talking about, and Sean was saying, I don't understand why investors would be accounting for 66% of the capital inflow. And I explained is because institutions invest in this Bitcoin fund because it's the only one that's listed, and they are not allowed really. They're not going to take investor money and go leave the money on an exchange or put it into a treasure or something like that. So they grayscale. They put it in the grayscale fund, which has about 200,000, almost 300,000 Bitcoin, which is significant portion of the amount of Bitcoin outstanding. All right, what else in the Bitcoin world? There's a backstory. I'll leave a link in the show notes tomorrow on Smaulgld. Just a decent article in Cointelegraph. What should we expect from an exchange tailor-made for Wall Street investors? And that is backed and ties into what we've been talking about, the storage component, the ability to spend it, the ability to trade it on futures, and take physical delivery. Indonesian Bitcoin, interesting story. They recognize Bitcoin as a commodity, and that is just as a legal matter. So, very large country, Indonesia, not necessarily a rich country, but it does have money. Now, this story, I should include more on Moronica, but I'm not going to. We got some other Moronica coming up. J.P. Morgan. Now, we talked yesterday about how J.P. Morgan supposedly is issuing their own coin, and it's for their institutional investors, and it's a settlement coin. And if anyone knows about these settlement or these stable coins, they're like Tether, Gemini has one, Coinbase has one. It's a way of putting your proceeds into a cryptocurrency on the blockchain. And it's not meant to go up or down. It's meant to be stable so that when you settle, you know that you don't have to convert into dollars and you can leave everything in the cryptosphere, the blockchain. And you would think CNBC, who has all these shows, have been covering Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies for a few years now, would understand that. I'm not going to play this clip, but this clip is pretty amusing. CNBC is talking about the JP Morgan coin, which is designed as a settlement coin. It's designed to be within the JP Morgan ecosystem for the institutional investors. It's not meant to be a circulating coin that's going to be used for payments. It's going to go up. It's going to go down. It's supposed to maintain its value. It's not supposed to go do anything. But CNBC had this, if you remember that What is Internet video clip from like 30 years ago where they're on the morning show and they're all clueless and they're trying to say, what is Internet? I think it does this. I think it does that. The way they're talking about this Bitcoin, this JP Morgan coin, they're saying that, is this validation for Bitcoin, or is it just going to eliminate Bitcoin if people just start using the JP Morgan coin? And if you know it's only amusing if you know anything about cryptocurrencies, because the JP Morgan coin isn't designed to eliminate Bitcoin as a payment. Any event, if you listen to it, it's moronic, but what can you expect? It's CNBC. All right, now, Lightning Network. We talk about the Lightning Network a lot, and you say, well, so what? What's the big deal? And we mentioned the other day, and it was in the news again, on the Litecoin site, that Square CEO Jack Dorsey, who's also the Twitter guy, saying Litecoin payments are coming to his Cash apps, just a matter of when. Now, what's Litecoin? Litecoin's a way. Litecoin. What is Lightning? Lightning's a way to trade or to do payments off or to transact off chain. Remember, when you're on the chain, it takes a while for the miners to confirm everything. You do it off the chain, then you record it onto the chain later, which means you have low fees. And if there's a network, then you can pass a lot of money around. That's what they've been doing. The network has like over 6,000 nodes now, hundreds of channels, thousands of channels. I think you can pass almost 3,000 Bitcoin on it. It's getting fairly robust. The UI isn't very good. But now they're talking about using the Lightning Network to buy Domino's Pizza. So there's a new Lightning Network, Lightning Pizza. And you can now buy your pizzas. A lot of stories on this. Again, it's a thing for adoption. If people can use it for payments because it's fast. That's why they call it Lightning. You don't have to wait for confirmations like you might do with Bitcoin currently, but you don't have to do on Litecoin. And Litecoin eventually its ecosystem will eventually clog up and it'll have to use Lightning, but it's already available for Litecoin as well. But Bitcoin, it's more important because they have over 10 times the transactions, But you can see now you can buy Domino's Pizza using the Lightning Network app. Lets you buy pizza with Bitcoin. So that's an interesting thing for adoption. And one more story. Now, this is back to the JP Morgan coin. Now, the JP Morgan coin is going to be a centralized, it's just on a blockchain, and it's a stable coin that they've invented. But it's interesting here. The Ripple CEO says JP Morgan coin misses the point of crypto. Yeah, I think the Ripple coin also misses the point of crypto, but that's another story. We'll move on from that. And last story here is we also discussed this yesterday. Virginia Pension Fund actually investing in a fund that invests in cryptocurrency in the form of things like Bakkt and Coinbase and eventually cryptocurrencies. So that is the Virginia Fairfax County Police Department. Invested, I think, $40 million of their pension fund in the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency industry. So they're one of the first pension funds. Now, there's another thing with the pension funds, if you think about it. Pension funds are hosed. It's going to be very hard for pension funds to meet the obligations that they've contracted for. Well, if they have this 1% or small percent in the crypto, that could be their Hail Mary. If they lose it, they're screwed anyway. So, all right, let's move on here. This is just an observation on the market. Now, the market went up today. And a lot of people, I had some decent conversations today on Twitter. They're very rational. They're market observers. They understand fundamentals. But a lot of people still don't get the fact that this is a fixed market. So, for example, the Fed had been raising interest rates, and they were saying that everything is great. We can raise interest rates. Everything's fine. And then all of a sudden, the stock market takes a dive. Then they say, well, and Trump starts berating them. Then they start with the, well, we're not sure. And then people freak out and they're like, I can't believe that the Fed is not going to stick to its tightening policy. Like, why wouldn't they? They're only going to stay on that policy to the extent that it doesn't impact the markets, the GDP, and the dollar. And they'll do as much as they can. But that's what people don't understand. They're not going to become what this fiscally prudent entity. They only do as much as they can do. And then if the markets are going to get screwed or the dollar's going to get screwed, they're going to change their policy. I mean, the government, ever since 1987, when the market fell under Reagan, and then a year later they created the President's Working Group on Financial Matters, the Plunge Protection Team. They decided, or Greenspan was the guy, he'd just been appointed Fed chair, that the stock market's very important, almost as important as the dollar to national security. It's how the United States maintains its hegemony. And that's when Greenspan said, well, we'll stand ready, willing, and able, pre-Draghi, whatever it takes, is basically what he said. And ever since then, we have not had a sustained stock market crash like you had after 1929. I mean, you have government central bank sanctioned speculation. Otherwise, companies like Tesla wouldn't even exist. And yet, companies like Tesla maintain multi-billion-dollar market caps. That's the way it is. I say here, anyone who thought otherwise is not paying attention. This has been going on since 1987. And it's what happens when the referees and the scorekeepers take a side and play in a game. Yeah, you can sound smart and say, oh, the fundamentals or the VIX and the PE ratios are unsustainably high. None of that matters, really. If they want to boost the stock market, and Trump's talking about a national emergency, and he's talking about the stock market, and he's talking about moving it higher. The stock markets will move higher. These aren't markets. The guy at Gaddis said it best. He said there are no markets, they're just interventions. And that's what happens. And it's obvious. And people keep saying unsustainable, unsustainable. As if it's like a market that is based on some type of fundamentals. Well, eventually, they keep saying eventually, Mother Nature takes over. No, if the markets are controlled by the government entities and the central banks, then they're going to go where they want them to go. And that seems to be what's happening. Like I say, simply failing to take that into account and simply shaking your head at the irrationality of it all misses the point. It's very rational once you accept valuations don't drive the markets. But still, people consist that, unsustainable. Yeah, everything's unsustainable. Your life is unsustainable. But this has gone on since 1987. So if you were born in 1987, you're 30 some odd years old. I mean, it's your whole life. All right. Now. We got a moron here.
Presenting the distinguished international news commentator and foreign correspondent,
Smaulgld. This has been an extraordinary week in world affairs.
No, I told Hillary Clinton that that's moronic.
All right. As a former lawyer, this one really disturbs me. This is moronic. It's not just Ted Lieu. I think Alan Dershowitz, who is a ACLU civil libertarian left-wing guy. However, he is a civil libertarian first. He defended O.J. Simpson. He is all for due process. Okay. And a lot of the right-wing news like to bring him on because he gets up there and he complains on what the liberals are doing to Donald Trump, and he likes to talk about due process and why impeaching Trump isn't the right thing. And the left hate him now because they view him as a traitor because he tries to look at things not from the political aspect but from the civil libertarian side. So he's been critical of the whole Mueller investigation. He's been critical of the Roger Stone arrest and the tactics used. He's been critical of a lot of things. And so I think he was on Tucker Carlson. He was on one of these shows. I didn't see it. I saw the clip. And he said that when he found out that McCabe, who was at one point I think he was the Deputy Attorney General, and then he became, not Attorney General, the Deputy, what was he? He was the head of the FBI. Yeah, and then he was the Deputy on the FBI. And he has given this interview where he mentioned how there was a period of time back in 2017 where he and his cohorts were talking about, including Rod Rosenstein, were talking about trying to get Trump removed on the basis of the 25th Amendment. Now, the 25th Amendment, we discussed this last night, is when the cabinet members decide that the president has lost it. It is incapacitated either through injury, through coma, or he's just out of his mind, or her mind, and the cabinet is concerned that he cannot perform his duties. Not that they don't like his policies, unless his policies are he's going to decide to conduct genocide on the world or something, but if they just don't like his policies, that's not a reason to remove someone via the 25th Amendment. You might have to say, well, he's a criminal, we'll have to impeach him under the impeachment proceedings. So there's ways to remove the president, and they are the Congress can impeach the president for crimes and misdemeanors, or the cabinet can say, this guy isn't fit, and not fit in the sense that they don't like what he's doing, but not fit because he's certifiable. He's lost it. He either can't think or is making no sense. And that's really the reason. It's not because you dislike the guy, you think he's, quote, crazy. It really has to be a disability. Now, there's people who believe that Donald Trump is not qualified and therefore, but that's really because you don't like his style and you don't like his politics. But it's pretty obvious to a rational person that you may find him to stay. Whatever your issues are, it's not that he doesn't know what he's doing. In fact, the reason people dislike Trump is because he knows what he's doing. It's obvious he knows what he's doing, and the people who don't like what he's doing don't like it. But that doesn't mean he's not, when I say fit, they think he's not fit because they don't like what he's doing. But it's not that his brain has gone off and that he's not able to do the job. He's perfectly able to do the job. They just don't like the job he's doing. Okay. So Alan Dershowitz says last night on TV that invoking the 25th Amendment in this fashion when you think that he's committed Russian collusion is unconstitutional. Well, that set off a bunch of snarky people thinking, oh, Alan Dershowitz, he must be losing his mind because he's saying that the Constitution is unconstitutional. Now, there's nothing worse when somebody is snarky about something when they don't know what they're talking about. When they try to act like, look at Dershowitz. He's saying the Constitution is unconstitutional. What is he, an idiot? No, you're the idiot because that's not what he said. And here you got Ted Lieu, who is supposedly, I don't know, is he a congressman? Dear Alan Dershowitz. This is the same guy that was holding up the Constitution to, who was he holding up to the other? Yeah, to the then acting Attorney General just a couple of days ago. I have no idea why they even held these hearings, but he was asking him, where does it say in the Constitution that sitting president can't be indicted? And he asked a bunch of series of questions, which were stupid, because we know the Constitution doesn't enumerate every possible. But anyway, here he is. He says, "Dear Alan Dershowitz," like he's going to teach Alan Dershowitz. Now remember, I mention this a lot. Just because you're Alan Dershowitz, or just because you went to Harvard Law School, or just because you're considered the guru in something, I don't care about that. I care about what's said. So I never ever say, well, who are you to question Alan Dershowitz, the premier? And I never do that. If Alan Dershowitz says stupid stuff, he says stupid stuff. Andrew Napolitano says stupid stuff. I don't say, well, he was a judge, or I don't go for that. So, but I know what Alan Dershowitz said. Not because he's Alan Dershowitz and deserves respect. It's because what he said was correct. But here comes Ted and a slew of others, all saying very similar things, that I never thought I'd see the day where someone like Alan Dershowitz would call the Constitution unconstitutional. He didn't say that. So Ted Lieu lecturing Alan Dershowitz. And again, I don't care who he is. I mean, I've seen Lawrence Tribe say a lot. I've seen a lot of smart people say a lot of stupid things. But he says, "Dear Alan Dershowitz, the 25th Amendment is the law." Thank you, Ted Lieu. Thank you for telling us that there's a 25th Amendment. VP and a majority of the cabinet can invoke this amendment. That's true. That's what it says. I'm glad. I guess he's starting to read the Constitution. He says, you can disagree with their use of it, should they invoke it. But you cannot say it would be unconstitutional. And then he gets snarky. You should read the Constitution again. No, Ted, it's not just reading the Constitution, understanding the words that are in there and being able to cite them. It is the application of those words. What Dershowitz said was, what Ted Lieu says is correct. The cabinet can invoke the amendment. But they would invoke the amendment if they thought the president was off his rocker. If they thought the president was incapacitated. That's not what Andrew McCabe was talking about. First of all, Andrew McCabe, working at the DOJ/FBI, is not the cabinet. So, if the cabinet decided they're going to invoke the amendment, just the cabinet, who have the right to invoke the amendment, and they say, yeah, well, we think he's colluded with Russia. That is an improper use of the 25th Amendment. The 25th Amendment, as Ted Lieu states, is for the cabinet to invoke, but because the guy is incapacitated, not because he's colluded with Russia. It's unconstitutional to use the 25th Amendment in a way that has nothing to do with being incapacitated. For example, I'll give you an example to make it even clearer. Congress can declare war. It has a constitutional power to declare war. The Supreme Court can't declare the war. The Department of Justice can't declare war. Similarly, you can't use, the Department of Justice can't evoke the 25th Amendment. So neither the cabinet nor the DOJ can even talk about the 25th Amendment unless they're talking about a president who is incapacitated. the whole thing, it's unbelievable that people who think, most of these people aren't even lawyers. I think Ted Lieu might be, or he's a budding constitutionalist because he's reading the thing now. Everything he says is correct, but then it's almost like, and that is all I need to know. It's that stupid. It's that moronic when you just get to the point where the cabinet can invoke the amendment. Yes, they can invoke the amendment on the grounds on which it's written, not because he might have colluded with Russia or we dislike his policies. He has to be incapacitated. Plenty of that all over the internet today. And what's interesting is Twitter gave it full, in other words, the way they like to pick their favorite people. I'm not even going to show them because why even give them the attention? But if Dershowitz was trending and 25th Amendment was trending, and they were all comments just like Ted Lieu's, like, isn't this foolish? Dershowitz is saying the Constitution is unconstitutional. Again, that's not what he was saying here. Yeah, I had to respond to some people here. I said, the argument is not the 25th Constitutional Amendment is unconstitutional, but the powers to remove a president that is incapacitated belong to the cabinet, not the DOJ, and certainly not Andrew McCabe. The 25th Amendment is not a power of the DOJ or the FBI. That belongs to the cabinet. It's not for the DOJ to go stir up the cabinet and say, hey, 25th Amendment this guy because of Russian collusion. No. The DOJ, FBI has no role in either revoking the 25th Amendment, that's for the cabinet, or instituting impeachment proceedings, that's for Congress. Meeting to encourage the 25th Amendment, that's what the DOJ with Andrew McCabe did with a bunch of guys, and starting investigations to encourage impeachment are outside the powers of the DOJ, FBI. What business is it of theirs? Their business is to investigate crimes, not to try to remove presidents. That's a police state. That's unbelievable that that's what they actually met on for 7 days, according to McCabe. The Constitution provides that Congress can issue a declaration of war, this is the point I was making earlier. If the DOJ declared war on Venezuela, that would be unconstitutional. Similarly, the DOJ can't evoke the 25th Amendment. It's not one of their powers, and that's not their job. The reason they give it to Congress is Congress is working with the president every day. They can tell if he's off his nut. They can tell if he doesn't know what he's doing. They can tell if he's incapacitated. How does Andrew McCabe, who doesn't even talk to the president, know that he's incapacitated? He's not even saying he is. He's just saying we got to get rid of him. So why don't we conspire and figure out a way to get rid of him? Well, how about the 25th Amendment? In the meantime, we'll start a Russian investigation and make sure we keep that going. And here again, just respond to these people. They had thousands of likes and retweets for saying in this snarky way that Dershowitz had lost it because he was saying the Constitution was unconstitutional. The cabinet can invoke the 25th Amendment for an incapacitated president, as per Ted Lieu, not because the DOJ or the FBI suspects Russian collusion and or hates the guy. Okay, the cabinet considering invoking the 25th Amendment is constitutional. That's right. The FBI stirring up the cabinet is not. Now, finally, I think even Dershowitz had probably gotten back to him that Twitter was having a field day on him. Here's what he wrote. It is unconstitutional to use the 25th Amendment to circumvent impeachment provisions. Now, what he's saying there is, if you think the president has committed a crime, FBI, DOJ, well, then it's up to Congress to impeach him. It's got nothing to do with the 25th Amendment. The 25th Amendment can only be used if POTUS is physically or psychiatrically incapacitated. Any other use is unconstitutional. I challenge anyone to argue differently. Absolutely, he's right. If the cabinet decided to invoke the 25th Amendment and said, this guy's colluding with Russia, well, so what? Then impeach him. It's got nothing to do with him being incapacitated. Unbelievable. All right, well, one last moronica here. This should be self-evident here. First of all, you probably don't know who this guy is. Bill Weld. He had been governor of Massachusetts like 60 years ago. Then he had been a Republican, and then in 2016 he ran with Gary Johnson as on the Libertarian Party. Got like 6 votes. And during the campaign, he said Hillary Clinton's a great gal. I think he called her, good friend, great public servant. So I'm not sure how he endeared himself to Republicans or Libertarians by praising Hillary Clinton. I don't know what else he said, but that was basically all he was known for during the 2016 campaign. But now he's back to being a Republican and he wants to run against Donald Trump. Uh-oh. So I did a little poll here. I mean, will Bill Weld take more votes from A, Donald Trump, B, the Democratic nominee, or C, neither? He'll get very few votes. The correct answer is C. He will get very few votes. If you are a never Trumper, you're not going to vote for Trump anyway. You'll vote for whoever it is. So let's say you totally hate Trump. Whether you vote for whoever the Democrats put up, whoever the Green Party puts up, or you vote for Bill Weld, Trump wasn't getting that vote anyway. Might Bill Weld appeal to 8 or 9 Democrats? Maybe. I don't see how he appeals to anyone. So, any event, there again on Twitter they were making this sound like, oh, this is great news. It's not like this guy is Schultz from Starbucks. He's got a name. He's got billions of dollars. He could take single-digit percentages away from the Democratic nominee in order to the point where it tips the election. William Weld isn't going to tip anything. You tip over Guam. All right, I think that's it for tonight. Other than the comments are always the best. So let's see what you guys are saying. In the meantime, the pitch for the mugs. Remember, we have no YouTube ads on here. We just get supported by the Smaulgld mug game changers and mug stackers, and that's the way it should be. So there you go. There's your pitch. You can buy mugs at smaulgld.com. You can donate by check, send precious metals, other items of value in the mail to Smaulgld LLC, P.O. Box 714, Dover, New Hampshire 03820. Or you can become a Smaulgld patron, donate via PayPal. If you don't like using those types of services, you can always donate directly via Bitcoin or Litecoin. The QR codes are on the screen. They're on the Smaulgld website. The web addresses are there. So thank you very much for all the people who have donated and will donate. And you can also support Smaulgld via buying your precious metals through the site, Golden Eagle Coins, Money Metals Exchange, SD Bullion, at the links below this BitChute and this YouTube. Smaulgld gets a small commission, and you pay no more, no less than if you visited those sites directly. So please check them out and support the site. All right, let's see what we got over there, mate. All right. Ann is here, Joe is here, Pablo is here, Miser is here, Keisha's back. The only emergency that wall not being presents is emergency to Trumpty Dumpty's bruised ego. All right, mate. What does mate say? Who would expect the rigged stock market to rise? PPT, stock buybacks, nothing to see here. Yeah, well, that does help. Low interest rates, you can borrow money and you can buy back your shares. Swamp Fox is here. Yep, buybacks. Geopolitical event will prop it up. News props up. Doesn't matter what the news, as long as it's news. And has copper pipes. It's important to have copper pipes. Are good. The odd thing, did anyone feel it was a state of emergency? The wall could be a national security, but emergency declaration took a while. You know what's interesting, Paul, about the state of emergency? I've looked at the other state of emergencies that other presidents have declared. I mean, I don't have the list in front of me, and they're not memorable because they weren't emergencies. State of emergency to prevent like someone in Somalia from doing something. Like, what? How is that a national emergency? So it's interesting, this national emergency concept. I think the 2001 9/11 thing, that was a national emergency. But the other ones are very non-memorable. But there is a statute since 1976 that allows for the state of emergency. The interesting thing is Trump has every right to declare a state of emergency. He can declare a state of emergency because he stepped on an egg or something. But it's because of the state of emergency, will he be able to allocate funds? Because that's what the Congress is supposed to do. The Congress is supposed to allocate funds. That's their job. So that's where it's going to go through the courts, and he mentioned that today in his press conference. The Ninth Circuit will go there, eventually go to the Supreme Court. So it's not really a state of the emergency in which you're going to see mobilization of I mean, most people, unless you live near the border or you happen to have an interaction with an illegal alien that isn't pleasant, then most people aren't going to even know there's a state of emergency. What every man should have. Why does the U.S. Mint produce gold, silver, platinum, and now palladium with dollar values on them? If they're not money, why have a nominal dollar value on them? The reason they have a nominal dollar value on it is that any coin that is minted by the U.S. Mint has to have a value on them. And remember, you may say, well, that means they're money. That means nothing. It just means that if you're dumb enough to spend that coin that is $50 banked on it, then you've just lost $1,000 or $1,300. You're not going to spend the silver eagle. It says $1. It's just that is the U.S. Mint. The Mint makes coins. Coins are sovereign issued coins that have face values on them. The Canadian Mint does. They all do it. It's not like a gotcha. Well, it must mean that they're money then. Yeah, they are. I mean, if you want to spend, they're legal tender. If you want to spend your gold $50 1 ounce coin, go ahead. You'll get $50 for it, and the merchant has to take it under legal tender laws, but he only has to give you $50 worth of value for it. Same with the platinum and palladium. They're not. I mean, I think it's $100 on the platinum coin for the 1 ounce coin. State of abuse will be Miser says state of emergency will be abused from now on. It feels like a setup for future abuse and future presidents. A lot of people have been saying that. I disagree with that because what they're saying, the Republicans are saying this to Trump. Don't do it because then the Democrats will declare a state of emergency on gun rights or gun control or gun violence or what's the other one? Climate change. It still comes down to a state of emergency doesn't allow the president to disregard the Constitution. You can't say, well, too many people are talking and it's creating a state of emergency, so I want to shut down the internet and get rid of the First Amendment. It's not going to hold up in court. You can declare the state of emergency, but it's not going to work. Similarly with climate change, the president says, well, we got a state of emergency. We're all going to burn in 12 years, so I'm going to allocate all these funds or I'm going to implement taxes. Can't do it. The president cannot implement taxes. President cannot allocate funds. So he can, I'm not so much concerned about it setting a precedent. It's still going to be an issue. Each case is going to have to go eventually probably to the Supreme Court if it involves doing things like allocating funds or worse, violating a constitutional provision like getting rid of the First Amendment, getting rid of the Second Amendment just because the president declares an emergency. So I don't know if that's really a problem. The problem is always how are you going to allocate the funds? His issue is, look, he's not going to get the funds from Congress. He's going to get $1.3 billion, and apparently that $1.37 billion that he is getting to build the wall, there's certain conditions on how he can spend it, and it has to be done in consultation with local governments. So he's figuring that he's going to allocate money that he has in the budget, the military budget. The question is there whether the Supreme Court will say that he can allocate that funds if that is something that is delegated to the Congress. I don't know the answer to that question. One thing he clearly can do, which he might do, and I just thought it's what he should do in order to get the wall, declare a state of emergency and mobilize like tens of thousands of troops and then leave them there and have them encamped there and then say the bill for this is whatever. And there's nothing they can do about it because it's in the military budget and he has the right to declare an emergency. Maybe that would give him the money just to build the wall. The whole thing is stupid because you're talking about $5 billion. You're talking about you have walls elsewhere. It's really a non-issue. It's 100% political issue because if anybody is serious about border control, you either have border control or you don't have border control. If you don't have border control, you're for open borders, but then obviously not another penny to walls, not another penny to anything else. But to say we're going to do the trick this way or that way, the way any security is done, anyone who's involved in any security, whether it's presidential security, whether it's home security, whether it is internet security, computer security, you have to have a multi-pronged approach. You don't just rely on the lock. You don't just rely on the alarm. You don't just, you don't just rely on the wall. You don't just rely on the ports of entry. You don't just rely on the drones. It's a multi-pronged approach. If they're interested in border security, the only reason they're not putting money in for the wall is because Trump wants it. And it's simple as that. All right, let's see. Yes, what every man should know is right. The U.S. is now ruled by national emergency. Ford issued the first one done during the 60s, World War II or Civil War. You're right. They're all in place, most of them. They're still in place. They're not martial law, but they're states of emergency. Yes, and Ann is saying apparently Clinton had 15, Obama had 9. The real issue is will he be able to spend that money under the national emergency? I wonder what would happen if they declare a state of emergency on gold, says Pablo. Yep, I agree. Two sides of the same coin to me. Oh, this is just a political game. It's absolutely right. DW, you say Russia buys gold because they have gold mines. Why doesn't the U.S. buy some gold? We have gold mines also. Yes, and that's a good point. The United States actually has about 250 tons of gold mining a year. The question I have is, yes, why don't more countries add gold? See, a lot of people give you this nonsense. Our United States has no gold left and it's gone long ago. Well, if gold was that important, as DW is pointing out, U.S. mines gold. They could, if this gold has been gone, I've been hearing the story for 10 or 15 years. Well, over the last 10 or 15 years, they could have added all the gold back. 300 tons a year. Times 10, that's 3,000. 20 years, 6,000. They say they have 8,000 tons. India imports has no gold mining. 900 tons of gold a year. It doesn't really impact the gold price. So it can be done. You can accumulate 7,000, 8,000 tons over a course of time. So the question is, why don't they? Well, I think the reason the U.S. doesn't even talk about gold, I wrote a long article, and I think it's called The Importance of Gold to Nations, is the United States does not want anyone to think, this is ever since Nixon took the U.S. off the Bretton Woods agreements, that the dollar has anything to do with gold. Whether the United States has 1,000 tons, 10,000 tons, or no gold really should have no impact on the value of the dollar. That was what Nixon said. He said the value of a nation's currency is based on the value and strength of that nation's economy. And the United States economy is the strongest in the world. That was fiat. That was his declaration. From now on, the dollar's value is based on the strength of the U.S. economy. And since we're the strongest economy, keep buying our dollars. That wasn't good enough. That's why they had to do the petrodollar agreements. The point being is that if countries want to buy gold, they would. All the central banks have agreements amongst themselves not to sell certain amounts of gold. They really have tried to not devalue, but to de-emphasize gold as a monetary metal. They all want to print money. They don't want to be restrained by a gold standard. So they all kind of act like gold doesn't matter. And that's the reason the United States doesn't add gold. Lost in a boating act. And what every man should know, I think the U.S. needs to show it's not insolvent. That's why the U.S. Mint sells PMs with face values. It hasn't got nothing to do with it. The amount of gold and silver coins they mint with face values on them is a de minimis amount. It's got nothing to do with showing it's not insolvent. The U.S. is most governments are technically insolvent. They'll never be able to pay back the amount of outstanding just debt that they have. The United States has got a deficit of $23 trillion, and they have unfunded liabilities, which they'll never be able to pay unless they just print the money. But in a way, they're not insolvent because they can just print the money, and that's a point Greenspan made, is that the U.S. is not going to default. Why? Because the Fed will just print up the money and pay it out. Now, it might not be worth anything or not be worth that much, but the reason that they mint coins with face value is not to show that the United States is not insolvent. DW, if the U.S. ever sees that the U.S. dollar is starting to lose dollar world status, do you see the U.S. ever buying some more gold? Well, no. You know why? Because as we've seen, DW, we've seen that adding gold to reserves of a central bank has done nothing to increase the value of that country's currency. For example, two extremes. Canada has no gold on its reserve, on its central bank reserves. Sold it all. Strong currency. relatively, compared to some others. The Bank of England sold most of its gold. It's got only 300 tons left. Kazakhstan has more gold, far more gold, like 60 tons more of gold than England. Whose currency is stronger? England's. Russia, 20% of its reserves in gold, relatively low debt, 500 billion in other foreign exchange assets. Horrible currency. Gold does nothing to, it's counterintuitive, but it does nothing to enhance a country's currency. Venezuela had like 700 tons of gold. They had massive hyperinflation. Had nothing to do with the amount of gold they had, and then they had to sell their gold. So, no, I don't think so. I don't think the United States is going to buy gold and somehow that's going to support the dollar. The amount of gold that you need today, the amount of, I think people don't understand this, and I did do the chart, and maybe go back and look at it, or maybe I'll show it tomorrow. Everyone talks about, China's got 20,000 tons of gold. Okay, so they have 20,000 tons of gold. You know how much that's worth? $890 billion. Big deal. They have $50 trillion, $60 trillion in debt. The gold is insignificant today. The amount, the price of gold would have to go to like $30,000, $40,000 for it to matter. Now, is it possible that there's some kind of collapse in that? Maybe. I don't know when or if that would happen. But the idea of anyone buying gold today, the amounts that they would have to buy, it's still, look at Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan has $14 billion worth of gold, $30 billion worth of foreign reserves in total. 47% of their foreign reserves are in gold. And look at the tenge, whatever their currency is called. It loses value on the day. Doesn't matter how much gold they have. So gold has lost that ability to buttress a country's currency. So I don't think so. I mean, if it was important, that's my point about the gold at Fort Knox. If it was important for the United States to have gold, they would have it. They'd have even more than they have now. They've decided, they put the world on a fiat standard, that it's not important. And apparently it's not important. All right. And what's the best way to publish the book? Okay. Pablo Pena. Cryptos every 3 years. Yeah. Okay, what every man should have. The dollar used to be described as a weight of silver or gold. Now, under a gold, that's right, under a gold standard, every country, in the classical gold standard from, I think, is 1870 to 1914, 1913, somewhere around there, they all had their currencies based on a measure of gold. And then prior to that, there was this bimetallic standard where you had silver and gold. Now a dollar means nothing. Well, it means it's a unit of account called a dollar. It's not backed by anything. PMs put value into the dollar. Or whatever currency unit that they had at the time. That is correct. That's what kept the stable value of currencies. As you know today, if you don't have that, then you just print them and you say they're a dollar. That's the fiat concept, and they're a dollar. All right. What else do we got here? Pablo Pena. I'd rather take a gold coin with a face of 50 than a $100 bill with a face value of 100. Well, absolutely. Well, it depends on the size of the gold coin. I think anything over 1/10 of an ounce, you're correct. What else? DW, Smaulgld mugs. Yes, you got to back your assets with mugs. DW, Ann Holland, please don't badmouth my Ripple. What else have we got here? Pablo Pena, SDW. Do you have that Smaulgld mug for SHTF? DW, yes, I will get one for Lucky just in case. Yeah, Lucky's been using the same mug. Let me show you Lucky. The Doberman. Lucky the Doberman. Fine animal. He has been, here he is, guarding his Smaulgld mug. Enjoying himself. What a nice dog. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, lawyer that went to Lolita Island multiple times. What was that? Fritz, what are we talking about there? What lawyer that went to Lolita Island multiple times? I know that's the, they call it the Lolita Express. That's where Bill Clinton went with Epstein. Pablo Pena, Lewis make a vote. Trump and mentally fit for the job. Okay. Ted DW, tried to buy a classic mug but couldn't close the deal. What happened there? What does that mean, DW? Couldn't close the deal because you decided, oh, can I spend the $19.99? I don't know. All right. Heard he drinks 10 Diet Cokes per day with aspartame and converts to wood alcohol in your body. It's not only concerned with Trump. Yeah, there's some very nasty news out in the last few years about Diet Coke. It is not good for you. They say that. They think that, what's his name? The guy in the Back to the Future, he used to drink cartons of it. And they say that's how he got Parkinson's disease. I don't know if that's true, but I did hear that. Joe Lazaro asked Pablo, if there was a vote, it was the election, there'll be another vote next year. Oh, DW, can you supply a direct order address? Are you trying to order via PayPal? Are you trying to order? My block keeps popping up when I accept. It says the site can't be reached. Well, I'm going to have to check that out right now. I haven't heard of that issue. It's very important that we sort that out because so if I go to Smaulgld.com, DW, and you're looking to order the classic mug, maybe that's why I haven't had a couple of sales in the last couple of days. Let's see. And you scroll down to buy classic mug with free shipping in continental US. Buy now, okay. And then that's the number. And then it says pay with PayPal. And then you put in your password and you send it off. I don't know what you're clicking on. Oh, you got your block keeps popping up when I accept. Says site can't be reached. I'll give it a try again. If not, email me at smaulgld@gmail. We'll work something out. So smaulgld@gmail, and we'll make sure we get a mug out to you. You figure out how you can pay if you want to pay by check or whatever. Yes, the powers that be don't want you to have that Smaulgld mug, DW. We'll make sure we get one to you. All right, let's see what else. Hopefully Lewis will post an address I can send my money to. Well, we have that. I'll post that address right now. I post it every night. It's usually, we had Lucky up there now, but that address is up every night. That's P.O. Box 714, Dover, New Hampshire 03820. But I'll put it up on the screen. It's funny, people do write to me. They say, what's the address? It's like, I guess a lot of people watch on the, they listen on the phone or they don't look at the images I'm posting. I post all these charts, but I guess people don't see them or they don't. But here it is on the screen here. There is how you can send notes or checks or whatever you want via the P.O. Box. But you could also email me at smaulgld@gmail.com. As I said, we'll work something out as long as you can contact me. DW, make sure you get your classic mug. Yeah, Fritz Bender. The 25th is in there in case POTUS has severe brain damage, such as from an accident or stroke or whatever. Not because he might have colluded with Russia. Yeah, looks like we got cut off again. No. We got to get back on. We should be... Yeah, stream is resumed. Okay. Sorry. All right, hold on. Let's see. Fritz Bender said... Oh, DW said, hopefully Lewis will post an address. I can send my money so I can get a classic mug. That address is now posted. And that is Smaulgld LLC, P.O. Box 714, Dover, New Hampshire 03820. We got cut off again. I think, Pablo, you mentioned that the powers that be were trying to stop DW from getting a mug, and clearly they were. They cut the stream off right at that point when DW was about to get the information necessary for him to get the Smaulgld mug. Fritz Bender, yeah, the 25th is in there in case POTUS has a severe brain damage, such as from an accident or a stroke. Correct. Not if he's suspected of colluding with Russia. What else do we got here? Yep. DW, says Pablo, the powers that be don't want you to have a Smaulgld mug. Let's see if they cut off the stream again. No, we're still on. I had to get back on very quickly. And then DW says, can I send payment to the Dover address for a mug? Absolutely. State of emergency, says Pablo. We need to stop cows from farting, AOC. DB Stupid says he got his pet food bowl, his Smaulgld pet food bowl. They supersized it. We'll send a pic tomorrow. Please send a pic with your dog's snout in the bowl. The Smaulgld pet bowl. Eating his favorite food. And we will post that tomorrow night. Remember, tomorrow night is Saturday Night Silver with Smaulgld. Want to go through some more silver charts tomorrow. DB Stupid. State of emergency fears about abusive. Dems look back at the unconstitutional executive orders of FDR. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Ridiculous. What FDR did was unbelievable. But this executive order isn't even that outrageous. It's really just a constitutional issue. Can the president allocate funds? That's really all it is. Because, all right. Oh, Pablo's made funny here. I like that. Who collects the interest on the debt the banker lends the money, I guess? Fritz Bender. It appears as though the Royal Canadian Mint sent out linking silver value with currency. They have $5 on the front of a 1 ounce coin when silver was much lower. They still have 5 ounce. That's a point I always make. That one reason to buy Canadian coins, silver coins over U.S. coins is, think about this. What if, I don't think this is going to happen, they wanted to confiscate your silver, okay? And the government has this moral concept that they have to pay you fair value. Well, what's the fair value of a $1 American Silver Eagle? It says right on it, $1, right? $1 American Silver Eagle. So you're better off with the Canadian Silver Eagle because it says $5 on it. If they're going to screw you out of the and pay you only the face value, you want to have the $5 face value. Jack, I always thought if silver drops below $5, then that coin has a face value outright. Is exactly what Jack just said. And Jack, you know, they also did that with the couple of years ago, and it became an accounting nightmare for the Royal Canadian Mint. They had these coins. They were like the size of a quarter. So you know, they had a quarter of an ounce worth of silver in them, but they had face values on them of like $10, $20. Now it's a very odd concept. So I thought, well, instead of having a $10 Canadian bill, I'd rather have this. I mean, it's not $10 worth of silver. It's like a $2.50 worth of silver, but that's still better than a $10 bill as it has some silver. A lot of people just turn them in, and they had an accounting issue with that. Anyway, Pablo says the next mug you make, put a face value on it. Yeah, and that'll make it, what do you call it, money. All right. Any reason why this? We already talked about that. Keisha asked, did Lewis say Canadian Silver Eagle? No, I said American Maple Leaf. All right. Anyway, it's good to see everyone tonight. And we will be back tomorrow. Remember, tomorrow is Saturday Night Silver with Smaulgld. And I hope to get DW's mug out. And we will see you tomorrow night.